11 months ago, there was a user on my channel that requested me to build a particular deck. 11 hours ago, they asked me again to build this exact deck. I figure I've let them wait long enough. Michael Ross 5178, thank you so much for having the patience to ask me multiple times over the course of several months to make a Tomik deck. I know that it's taken a long time for me to finally get to one, but all things considered, I think you will like the deck that I've come up with, because we are going to aim on pissing everybody off as often as possible. That is our deck's goal. Your job as the player of this deck is to sit back and be a literal shitlord, cackling in the corner as everybody conspires to try to hit you, and hitting you will only hurt them and help you. So let's go ahead and get into it. Tomik Wielder of Law is a 2/4 Orzhov and 1 human advisor commander. He's got affinity for planeswalkers, which we won't be doing too much with, but he's also got flying, vigilance, and an incredibly interesting ability where if 2 or more creatures attack you at the same time from the same opponent, then that opponent loses 3 life and you draw a card. This really does beget a question, though. How do we make players attack us? There are mechanical ways to make it happen. Goad-style effects that are not worded like goad will force creatures to try to attack us, but there are other ways we can make this happen, and that is with pure, unadulterated, salty player psychology. One way we can make players attack us is by using certain effects in Magic that really incentivize attacking, like the Monarch and the Initiative. Yes, I'm gonna find a way to make this about my favorite archetype no matter what you guys want me to do. We're talking about dungeons again, but there are other ways. Players don't like losing their permanents. They don't like losing the cards in their hand. So what if every single turn we threatened a card from every player's board and every player's hand as often as humanly possible? Let's go ahead and get into how we're going to do all of that. First of all, the initiative. Why are we doing the initiative? The initiative is a mechanic that allows us to put basically a marker on ourselves. Whenever somebody deals combat damage to us, they will gain a marker like this as well. This works identically to the Monarch, where you get a marker that lets you know that you're the Monarch, and if somebody attacks you, they get the Monarch. With the Monarch, you draw a card at the end of your end step if you happen to be the Monarch, so players who want to draw extra cards are always incentivized to get handsy with your life total. The initiative is a little more complex, though. You see, at the beginning of your upkeep, you get the initiative's ability, and anytime you gain the initiative. This instantaneous gain comes with a much slower buildup of advantage. You see, whenever you gain the initiative, you start off in the Undercity, putting a marker letting everybody know that this is where you are. The minute you gain the initiative, you will search your library for a basic land, reveal it, then put it into your hand. Afterwards, every subsequent time you gain the initiative, or you enter your upkeep while you have the initiative, you will go further into the dungeon following the arrows. If I choose to go through the forge, then I get to put 2/1/1 counters on a creature, but this prevents me from going to the stash next because it is not connected physically to this area in the dungeon. I can choose to go to the trap area where a player loses 4 life, or I can goad a creature. From either of these, I can draw a card, but from the arena, I can choose both drawing a card from the archives or making a 4/1 skeleton from the catacombs. Finally, all paths will lead to the Throne of the Dead 3, where you reveal the top 10 cards of your library. Put a creature from among them onto the battlefield, give it 3/1/1 counters, and it gains hexproof until end of turn, giving you a massive payoff, and other players are going to want this massive payoff as well, so it's very likely they are going to try to get handsy with your life in order to maintain having this. Now, luckily for us, our commander is Tomik, who is nice and evasive and really good at blocking due to having vigilance. This makes it very hard for players to swing creatures at us without us being able to block at least one of them, which means they are incentivized to swing at us with 2 creatures in order to get the initiative or the monarch from us. This, of course, means that Tomik will be able to block 1, and we'll get his trigger, making our opponent lose 3 life, and then we draw a card for them getting these abilities. And of course, if they do not try to steal the monarch or the initiative from us, then we get to benefit from them a lot, giving this a bit of a Faustian bargain effect, making players have to decide whether us getting an instantaneous draw and burn is worth it now for the exchange of us getting all of the other benefits later, if they do not try to take them away from us. With the other side of the Faustian bargain being that Tomik is able to steal these things back very easily due to being an evasive creature on his own. We'll be using 8 cards to gain the initiative throughout our journey. Goliath Paladin has Vigilance, so he's a good blocker and gives us the initiative. Underdark Explorer gives us the initiative while having Menace. Underseller Sweep gives us the initiative whenever it touches the battlefield, and if we attack, or if a player we're attacking has the initiative, we make sure that we get 2 1/1 white soldier tokens, making it even harder for people to very slowly attack us. They are still going to want to hit us with big creatures very, very quickly. Dungeoneer's Pack lets us gain 3 life, draw a card, and create a treasure token, and go and get the initiative whenever we use it. Vicious Battle Rager gives us the initiative when it touches the battlefield, and if he becomes blocked, then somebody gets to lose 5 life when they block him. This means we get to get the initiative from the Battle Rager and then swing him at an opponent, forcing them to make a choice. Do they take 1 and lose the initiative, or do they lose 5 life, compounding with the burning Tomik has already done to them due to him, being Tomik. Passageway Seer gives us the initiative and also has the ability to throw 1/1 counters on himself. Ravenloft Adventurer makes everybody lose effectively. When this is on the board, everybody loses their cards to the exile zone instead of to the graveyard anytime a card would be destroyed from their own board, or a creature, rather, would be destroyed from their own board. Then, the Ravenloft Adventurer has 1 more ability, another additive burn effect based on how many cards it has exiled throughout the game. White Plume Adventurer also gives us the initiative and the ability to untap our creatures, which also makes us have more blockers, which also means our opponents have to swing at us with multiple creatures instead of just 1. For the Monarch, we are going to be using Palace Sentinels to get the Monarch. Palace Jailer gives us the Monarch as well, and of course, it has a removal effect built in. Thorn of the Black Rose has the Monarch and Death Touch. Custodialich gives us the Monarch, and whenever we become a Monarch, we get to make a player sack a creature. And the Archon of Coronation gives us the Monarch, and if we have the Monarch, damage doesn't cause us to lose life, meaning we can let people hit us as much as we want with our Tomik's ability, and while yes, other players will draw cards, we will always draw cards and burn them without losing any life ourselves. We also want to add in a couple ticking time bombs to make sure that players are incentivized to remove us from the table as fast as possible. So, Gideon Champion of Justice is one of these time bombs. Put a loyalty counter on him for every creature that a target opponent controls, or you can turn him into the big Gideon if you choose. But the reason we are running him is for the psychic damage. This will come onto the board and just slowly build himself up, while just threatening our opponents with this -15 ability that exiles all other permanents. Now, we will likely not plan on using this ability in 90% of cases, but staring our opponents down with this time bomb means they are very, very likely to try to remove either Gideon or us, which of course plays into Tomik's strategy. Sorin, Lord of Innistrad, gives us an emblem with creatures we control get 1/0, and that emblem cannot be interacted with. The only way to deal with the emblem is, of course, player removal, giving people even more incentive to get rid of us ASAP. It's also very likely that we are going to lose lots of creatures during our attempts to stall our opponents out, so we need to have a pretty hefty reanimation package to bring those creatures back, but as many of these as can serve double duty as possible will be fantastic. From the Catacombs revives a creature and gives us the initiative and is repeatable from the graveyard. Liliana Death's Majesty revives a creature from the graveyard and also can make tokens while just being a planeswalker to bleed into the affinity abilities of Tomik. Victimize lets us sack a creature, say the token made from Liliana, to revive 2 creatures from the graveyard. Unburial Rites revives a creature from the graveyard and has flashback to do it again. Doomed Necromancer revives a creature from the graveyard while being a blocker up until the point where we do that. Yawgmoth's Vile Offering allows us to reanimate a creature and also blow up a creature our opponents control, and Ever After lets us revive 2 creatures from our graveyard instead of 1. Having a reanimation engine will also allow us to play some very hefty creatures that we normally would not get to use, but in our case, those creatures are going to be large enough to be threats that force our opponents to get handsy with our life. They make blocking scenarios work well in our favor, and oh, did I mention, all the big creatures I'm going to talk about are all removal pieces if they are not things that just give us the initiative. We'll talk about that when we get to the removal section, but we need other ways to draw cards besides the monarch. So let's go ahead and talk about our draw package. The best kinds of draw engines you can run in a deck like this are ones that make our opponents think and think and think, and think about hitting us when they are done thinking. So this is one of the few decks that I can confidently say we can run Bad Deal in. The card is horrible in 99% of scenarios, but for our purposes, this is exactly what we want. Make every opponent discard 2 cards, allow us to draw 2 cards, and then every player loses 2 life. This card, as soon as we play it, is going to make every opponent try to hit us. We will be exhausted of mana, and we will look like an opportune target, which is what we are trying to go for. We are running 9 cards that give us draw over and above this, though. Well, 8 that give us draw over and above this, 9 total. One of them is going to be the Fanatic of Harrowing. This makes each player discard a card, and then if we discard a card this way, we draw a card. Dire Sight allows us to Surveil 2, then draw 2. Read the Bones lets us scry 2, then draw 2. Siphon Mine makes every other player discard a card, and then we draw a card for every card discarded this way. Pact Weapon, this is a fantastically weird card we get to run in here. Tomik gets to be a Pact of the Blade Warlock. So as long as Pact Weapon is attached to a creature, you do not lose the game for having 0 or less life, meaning, again, we can just kind of sit on Tomik if they can't get rid of Tomik. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, we draw a card and reveal it. Then the creature will get XX until end of turn, and we will lose X life, where X is that card's mana value. Yes, this can burn us quite a bit during a game, but it will let us dig through our deck and make Tomik burn people down alongside everything else we are doing. Hostile Negotiations lets us exile the top 3 cards of our library in a face-down pile, then do that again, and then we pick one of those piles and figure out which opponent is going to decide which pile we get. One pile will go face up to them, one pile goes face down to them, and they get to pick door number 1 or door number 2. This means that we can make our opponent basically go through a shit ton of psychological damage, figuring out if they are giving us the right or the wrong pile. And of course, throwing big creatures into our graveyard always works well for us. Collector's Vault can also let us put things in the graveyard by letting us draw cards and discard cards. It also creates treasure tokens so that we can get up to the high mana values of dumb cards like Bad Deal. Then we have Ashiok the Wicked Manipulator. If we would pay life while our library has at least that many cards in it, we can exile that many cards instead. We can also use her +1 ability to look at the top 2 cards of our library, exile one of them, and put the other one into our hand. His -2 ability allows us to make a Black Nightmare, and their -7 ability lets us exile the top X cards of a player's library, where X is the total mana value of cards that we already own in exile. Again, a ticking time bomb no one will want to deal with, as this is mill that dodges Eldrazi protection. But of course, the primary purpose is just being able to dig into our deck and being a Planeswalker to give us a little bit of that Planeswalker affinity ability. That all said, we do still need to remove things from our opponent's boards, so they can't just run us over with all of the tempting things we are throwing out there that will make them want to run us over. So let's go ahead and talk about our removal package. It's gonna be beefy. A whopping 19 cards in our deck, not counting board wipes. We got 3 of those, so 22 cards in our deck are solely dedicated to removing things from our opponent's board states and making them very, very upset. Let's go ahead and begin. We have Voracious Fellbeast, a great reanimation target that removes a creature from every opponent's board by making them sacrifice them and gives us food that we can use to stay in the game longer afterwards. Arbiter of Woe, when we drop it on the board, draws us a card, makes every opponent discard a card and lose 2 life. Duskmangler makes every opponent lose 4 life, discard a card, and sacrifice a creature. Vile Mutilator is another great reanimation target, making our opponents lose a creature and an enchantment by sacrifice every time we play the Vile Mutilator. This means if we revive this, we are getting rid of 6 cards from the board. Butcher of Malakir is another great reanimation target, as it has the ability to force everybody to sack creatures whenever it or another creature we control dies. This means we can keep our opponent's boards low enough that they can't swing at us with 5, 6, or 7 creatures. We want to keep them curated down to about 2 creatures so that we can get Tomik triggers or just, be in the better board state and fight them outright. If we're winning, and we just punch them in the face. The last big reanimation target we have here is Shard of the Void Dragon, a 7/7 flyer that whenever it attacks, each opponent sacrifices a non-land permanent, and of course, it has the ability to pump itself as well as a small added bonus. 7 damage every turn and losing one of your cards every turn is not a fun situation to be in for most players. For regular removal though, we are running a Resign or Reduce to Memory to get rid of non-land permanents, Mortify to get rid of creatures and enchantments, Utter End exiles any non-land permanent, Despark gets rid of any non-land permanent or any permanent with mana value 4 or greater, Reign of the Pit forces every player to sacrifice a creature, then we make an XX Black Demon, where X is the total power of all the creatures we got rid of this way. A Cursed Marauder makes everybody sack a non-token creature, Plaguecrafter makes everybody sack a creature or a Planeswalker, discard a card if they can't, Siphon Flesh makes everybody sack a creature, and then we make a bunch of 2/2 zombie creature tokens when we do. Demon's Disciple makes all of our opponents sacrifice a creature as well. The Eldest Reborn also forces our opponents to sack creatures, then discard cards, then we'll revive any creature that we want. Elspeth Conquers Death exiles a permanent an opponent controls, then has a second ability we just really aren't gonna do too much. It stacks our opponents out. That's fine. We're really here for that third ability that gives us another Reanimate attached to a removal spell. And we've got a couple of Planeswalkers in here as well. Obnixilis Reignited has a draw engine attached to them and the ability to blow up any target creature, and Gideon Jurek can blow up tapped creatures while also forcing an opponent to swing at him with his +2 ability, which of course will trigger Tomik. And all of our board wipes will not get rid of Tomik, so we can keep him on the board for the maximum amount of time possible. Promise of Loyalty makes everybody put a vow counter on a creature. That creature can't attack us, and then they sacrifice everything else. While this does seem counterintuitive to Tomik's strategy, we do need to make sure that boards are kept somewhat clean if they get out of hand. Single combat, we choose a creature on our board and sacrifice everything else. Our opponents do the same. Cataclysmic Gearhult makes everybody sacrifice a card of all cards they have of all types that are not lands, but they get to keep one card of each type, a creature, enchantment, planeswalker, etc., and those are what they keep after the wreckage. With all that said, we do need to make sure that we are not just wiping our opponent's boards clean. We need to make sure we have enough mana to play Magic the Gathering. So let's talk about ramp and mana before we get into how to play the deck. What better way to start with pissing off our opponents than playing Charitable Levy early in the game? We get to stack our opponents out by 1 mana for 3 spells, and then afterwards, this card will explode and let us draw a card and ramp up a Plains. Then we have Marbled Diamond and Charcoal Diamond as 2 mana rocks. Mind Stone is a 2 mana rock we can use to draw cards later in the game. Wayfarer's Bauble to give us the safest kind of ramp possible, which is land ramp. Orzhov is another 2 mana rock. Honored Heirloom gives us a 3 mana rock that can be used to get rid of people's graveyards. Not one at a time, very slowly, mind you. Please use Honored Heirloom to get rid of cards at the exact moment people are reanimating their cards. Then we have Saravok's Tome, which gives us another card that gives us initiative, which means more reasons for our opponents to get handsy with our life and trigger Tomik. It also has the ability to give us free casts of cards from our deck after we have completed a dungeon. Finally, we have Stone Speaker Crystal to get rid of everybody's graveyards all at once, and of course, on top of that, it is a great 2 mana rock Hedron Archive alternative. After that, we have lands. We've got 10 plains and 13 swamps. The dual lands of Tainted Field, Temple of Silence, Orzhov Basilica, Exotic Orchard, Command Tower, Shine Shadow Snarl, and Sunlit Marsh, with the Sunlit Marsh's job being a plains swamp that can be grabbed with Charitable Levy, while Orzhov Basilica makes up for being a tapped land by being able to reset our utility lands. We are running the Fetching Land Lands, Evolving Wilds, Ash Barrens, and Terramorphic Expanse, with Myriad Landscape being used to ramp us later in the game as well. Finally, our utility lands are Throne of the High City to give us another card to give us Monarch, Ominous Cemetery to be used to get rid of problematic creatures on the board, and Pit of Offerings, which can be used to get rid of problematic cards in graveyards, and of course can be reset with our bounce land. That all said, this should be enough land to get us through any given game, especially with the initiative letting us grab extra land as we go. But all that's left to do is talk about pissing people off by showing you how to play the thing. If I'm being honest, as long as we can get either Monarch or Initiative off very early in the game, then we are in a great spot. And looking at this opening hand, we have access to one of them with Dungeoneer's Pack. We don't have any ramp here, but Tomik comes down really early, so I think this is a reasonable keep, especially with Mortify being an option in our hand too, another way to get rid of problematic cards if need be. So let's go ahead and draw a card. We see a Shard of the Void Dragon in our hand. We can't use that at the moment, but we'll go ahead and put the command tower down and pass to our opponents. Moving into turn 2, we have an Utter End, giving us a nice removal spell to curve into later. Let's play the Ominous Cemetery down and pass into the next turn. There's our Unburial Rites. Can't do anything with that right now, but we can go ahead and drop a land down and tap 1, 2, 3 and play Tomik. Next turn, we get a Wayfarer's Bauble. Let's go ahead and play a Plains, tap 1 for the Bauble, and let's go ahead and tap all 3 of these and get the Dungeoneer's Pack on the board so we can get initiative going on our next turn. Moving into our next turn, and we have a Dusk Mangler here. We can't use it just yet, and we have nothing in our grave, but we can go ahead and tempt our opponents with the initiative right now. Let's go ahead and play a Plains and tap 1, 2, crack the Wayfarer's Bauble and go into our deck and get a land, and crack the Dungeoneer's Pack as well so that we can get another land and put it into our hand, giving us the initiative and allowing us to tempt our opponents the first time. It is very likely that our opponents are going to steal the initiative from us as we only have Tomik on the board, so let's go ahead and assume that we get to burn them and draw a card as they yank initiative from us. Now we need to go ahead and try to take it back. We move into turn 6, and we are going to swing Tomik at the player who has the initiative. It's unlikely they have a flyer, and if they do, we can Utter End or Mortify the flyer away. We will take the initiative back, and we will go ahead and put 2/1/1 counters on Tomik for doing so. Now we can go ahead and play a land for turn, and let's go ahead and tap out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All of these go away, and Shard of the Nightbringer comes online. Now that Shard of the Nightbringer is out, people are very incentivized to get rid of us as fast as possible, since losing a card every turn is not ideal for any of them. Let's assume that this early in the game, people aren't able to swing at us with anything major, but if we got a token player on the board, you know what? Maybe we can assume they get the Undercity from us, and we get to draw a new, fresh card. We move into turn 7, and we have the Palace Jailer here. Now we have access to the Monarch mechanic on top of everything else. Let's go ahead and play a Swamp. 1, 2, 3, 4. Palace Jailer is out, and now we have the Monarch. Now players are very incentivized to try to take care of our board state, but for us, we are going to be holding on to a little bit of extra mana to use Mortify if we need. But if everybody's got big creatures and stuff on the board, then maybe the correct move is instead playing Honored Heirloom so that we have 2 mana open for D-Spark. Now, we have the Monarch. We go ahead and swing Tomik at somebody. We burn somebody for 4. I don't know why I did that twice. Tomik has Vigilance, so he doesn't go out, but Shard of the Void Dragon does have flying and not Vigilance, so this is just going to make everybody sack a non-land permanent. And now we get to end to our opponent's turn. Let's assume that somebody gets really threatening. We are going to have to D-Spark their card away, but it is very likely somebody is still going to be able to swing enough creatures at us to steal the Monarch and initiative from us. I forgot my draw from the Monarch, by the way. So they steal these from us, and while that does suck, we are going to take them back on our turn. We move into turn 8, and we go ahead and play a land for turn. Let's go ahead and try to steal back important cards from our opponent. As of right now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 available mana. So all we have to do is hold up Mortify. That's the only important card we have available. So we need to keep Honored Heirloom up for its tap ability, and Command Tower up for the slew of mana it allows us to have. So this is going to be our available mana. We play Dusk Mangler. We force every opponent to sack a creature, discard a card, and pay for life. And when this enters our battlefield, then we get to choose which one we want to lose. Let's go ahead and just pay the 4 life. Now we swing the Shard of the Void Dragon, making our opponents lose another card, and Tomik swings as well, giving us access to the Undercity. For some reason, Moxfield is obsessed with telling me there's a new version of the deck available, which there is not, so we're going to have to play without our graveyard, I guess. We mortify a card from our opponent, but remember, we did get to draw 2 cards from our Monarch and our Undercity. These 2 draws are Doom Necromancer and Orzhov Basilica. Mortify goes over here, I guess not in the grave, because again, I can't access the dang thing. And now our opponents have to try to swing at us once more. If they do, then yeah, that sucks, but we do have blockers available, and because we have reanimation spells in hand, we are incentivized to start blocking with things like Dusk Mangler, throwing it into the grave so we can revive it when our turn comes up. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and take our final turn. We are gonna go ahead and swing Tomik at a player with the Shard of the Void Dragon. They're going to lose a bunch of cards, and we are going to get the Undercity off finally as well and see what we can grab. So from the top 10 cards of our deck, let's see what we get. A Vicious Battle Rager wouldn't be bad. It would reset the Undercity on us. Custodial Lich wouldn't be bad. I think there's the option, though. The option is going to be Butcher of Malakir. Let's put this out because it is a nice big flyer that hurts our opponents and forces them to be in bad situations when they do not want to lose cards. And let's go ahead and make things even worse for them by paying 5 mana and playing the Unburial Rites. This will get us back the Dusk Mangler, making them discard a bunch of cards, lose 4 life, and lose a creature as well. They've lost 1 card from their hand each, so that's 3 cards. They've lost a non-land permanent each, so that's 6 cards, and they've lost a creature each thanks to Dusk Mangler, and they've burned for 4 each. We've done the equivalent of about 24 damage, and we've gotten rid of 9 to 12 cards from our opponent's boards. And if they get rid of anything on our board, then Butcher of Malakir will butcher their boards out. And as we passed our opponents, we hold up an Utter End that we can use to get rid of a problematic board piece if need be. And remember, we do get that draw from the Monarch, keeping our hand nice and freshly clean as time goes on. And if we don't need to Utter End, we can use the Honored Heirloom to get rid of a card in a player's graveyard as soon as they try to reanimate it. Basically, we are in a dominant position, and we will not be unseated from this position very easily. I also hit the update button because I'm done, and I realized that that wouldn't have gotten rid of my board at all. I could have just hit the update button at any point. That is a me problem. I am sorry, I'm stupid. Effectively, you're trying to play an arch-enemy game. Piss off all of your opponents so you have access to the draws from Tomik and the burn from Tomik. But even though you know how to play the deck, what if you wanted to go ahead and upgrade this build a little bit? As of right now, it's sitting at $15.50, but if you had a little more money, how would you upgrade this? If you're upgrading this deck, then adding in cards like Stroke of Midnight or Anguished Unmaking will do you a lot of good, as these cards are removal spells that either lower the curve of our deck or change some of our sorceries into instants so they are able to be used in more situations. Esper Sentinel would also be fantastic. The psychic damage this card causes that makes people try to attack you as soon as possible is fantastic. And if people are attacking you, you may as well get that life back with a Bloodthirsty Conqueror, which also forces your opponent to sculpt how they are swinging at you in the first place when they try to steal Monarch or the initiative. Also, passive draw is the name of the game, so Phyrexian Arena can supplement our draw a little bit, with Mangara the Diplomat supplementing our draw as well when our opponents decide to cast multiple cards. We can add more psychic damage with Blind Obedience, as the extort ability is great, but on top of this, making our opponents drop their things onto the battlefield tapped can really disrupt game plans and make them try to attack us as soon as possible. possible. Finally, for big psychic damage, we can make sure that Farewell is included in our deck. Just having access to this can cause people to try to remove us from the game as fast as possible, and I think it's a fantastic include in a deck like this that really just wants to piss our opponents off to the nth degree. And if you're upgrading this deck anyway, let's go ahead and put in as many MDFCs as possible so that our land base is as functional as humanly possible. If we are passively drawing lots of cards, we want those cards to be live as often as they can be. So making sure that our lands have the highest utility imaginable is going to be on the docket. That all said, I hope that you all have enjoyed this deck, and I really, really do hope that this deck fits your needs, Michael. I know that originally Tomik was not the price that I needed him to be for me to actually do a $15 deck, but now that I've gotten a little more lenient on the restrictions for those decks, here you go, and I hope you end up having fun with it. That all said, thank you all for watching, and if you did not know already, I am going to be on a panel called Is Sonic the Hedgehog Finally Good Again over at MagFest on January 25th at 10:30 p.m. Please, if you are available, stop by the booth there, stop by the panel, and me and Nick from the Game Apologist, as well as Wayne as boss, are going to be talking about our favorite blue hedgehog. That all said, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching the video. If you have any upgrades or suggestions, let me know in the comment section below, and thank you very much for being here. Again, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Agamotto, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fire Shard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one, hopefully.